What's written here? Christ is King. Can you see that? Christ is King. When you see a jersey like this, ladies and gentlemen, just know that there's fire in the building. I sense the anointing and the power of the Holy Ghost. Right? I've met several women in life, but I'm meeting and having this conversation, this chat one-on-one with this powerful woman of God for the first time. I've heard her speak from afar. I've listened to her. I've been motivated. I've been inspired. I've been impacted. And there are few women like that in this world. And of course, this is a platform where we get to engage, interact, learn from icons, gurus, moguls, trendsetters, trailblazers, difference makers, and world changers. You know what I'm talking about. The Real Life Show. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is a mentor. She's a consultant. I think she's a businesswoman. She is the lead pastor, and she is the founder and director at Appart International. Pastor Gladys Paswani. Pastor sir? Oh, Pastor Ma.
Yes.
I'm used to sir. Pastor Ma, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's really great to be here.
Great. Awesome. How is the evening, first of all, so far?
Well, with this,
yes,
it's going to be a good evening. I think most times when evening comes, we're winding down,
yes,
we are quiet.
Yes.
But I think conversations like this in the evening awaken purpose, they feed purpose, they get us to have a meaningful evening. So I'm expectant.
How would you define your regular day like? You're a very busy woman.
I don't think I have regular days because I have a lot on my plate, and I think my work is pretty diverse, so to speak. So I don't have very predictable days. So, but really, my day is about trying to make sure that I make progress on all the different aspects of the work that I do. It's very early mornings. I'm a very
what
early
time
riser.
Do you wake up?
So between 3:30 to 4. I'm
wow.
up, without an alarm.
So I would love you to briefly just run me through your routine.
Run me through a routine.
Yes,
okay.
from 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You wake up and you do what? Pray?
So about like 3:30, I'm up, and I try to make sure that I spend enough quiet time. Just some quiet, reflective time as well. So I don't automatically just jump out of bed most days, but sometimes I do feel like I want to, get up and I want to get into prayer immediately. So whether the prayer happens right at 3:30 or if it happens after I've had some quiet time, either way, that time in the morning I'm going to have prayer time. I'm going to spend some time just quiet because I just feel like our world has so many distractions.
That's true.
And I think the temptation most times is the moment you wake up, you go onto some social media platform, you check your emails, you check your messages. So you're introduced to voices that have the power to govern, you. So the way I start my day is always very, very important. Of late, I've started working out again. So I
go to the gym?
No. So I have a really great workout app that I use at home.
Okay.
So normally, a healthy lifestyle is a big deal to me as well. Okay. So I do pay attention to my health quite a lot. I went on a vacation in August, and I'm telling you, it's been kind of downhill from there, but of course, really just picking myself up now and just trying to get myself back into a healthy routine. So there's definitely going to be some exercise there. And then of course I put everything together, make sure that I'm at the office by 7. So between 6:30 and 7, I'm at the office. And I'll tell you, like by 11, I've done what most people do in a full day.
Really?
So I'm at my best early morning. After lunch, I start to slow down. And this is the time where I do a lot more engagement, just to, in the morning, I'm trying to have quiet time even with my work. So that's when I do paperwork. that's when I do the kind of work that demands me to, my attention and my resource, mental resource and things like that. Yeah, and then in the afternoon, it's meetings, it's sessions, it's engagements, it's training. It's a diverse type of work.
Are you Zambian?
I am a Zambian.
You're from Zim?
I'm from Zimbabwe.
Were you born there?
Born in Zimbabwe. Only came to Zambia in 2008 with my late husband. The family came. We actually came on a circular assignment, and we thought we'd only be here for 8 months. But of course, the Lord had it that we would stay. And there are so many things the Lord did to keep us in this land, but of course proved to be, particularly for me, a land of assignment. The birthing of Appart and a lot of the work that I'm doing happened here in Zambia, and we find ourselves still here.
So you came for work?
Yeah, so Bishop Paswani is the one that was here on a work assignment.
Oh, you're still married by then when you came?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. So you've been here for close to how many years?
About 12 years now. That will be
12 years now.
Yes.
What are the differences between Zambia and Zim?
Very few differences. I mean, Zambia is very, very rich in culture. I must say, 72 tribes against 2 major tribes in Zimbabwe, and I think that changes the dynamic. So maybe four tribes, but then 2 predominant tribes, which is the Shonas and the Ndebeles. But we do have Tongas in Zimbabwe as well, and a few others. But the dominant ones being the 2. So of course that influences a lot about how people live and how they integrate with each other. That's been a slight difference, but same weather patterns. Same warmth and.
Do you think the work ethics are the same? I've heard amazing stuff about Zimbabweans when it comes to work.
Yeah, I try not to build a hypothesis on things like that, because I just feel like, the world goes through so much change. Okay, so we have to say, are we going to hold on to certain statements even after things like COVID happen, after an economic imbalance, and talking about the challenges Zimbabwe has gone through? So I'm always thinking, it's important to check what happened, So we hit inflation. I mean, I don't know if you know the history of Zimbabwe and what the country went through, where we had hyperinflation. And so what did that do to people's work ethic? So on a general sense, I would say yes. As Zimbabweans, we are a hardworking people. I mean, we live in a society where at 3 a.m. the women are already on buses, going to the market to get their wear. Everybody has their hands to something. And I think we can attest to that, to the truth in that, when you look at how a lot of people survived such harsh conditions in Zimbabwe. I mean, there was a time when prices would go up between you picking up something from the shelf to going to the till. So if you think about, what did it mean for people to survive that, must speak of a level of courage and tenacity, so.
That's powerful. I think it answers my question.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of things. Talk to me about your academic background, qualifications.
Okay. So my degree is in business admin, in admin and office procedure. So the interesting thing is I never really did much work in terms of, I didn't go into the workspace after college. So I got married pretty young. That's a story for another day, or maybe a story for today. I was much younger than you, much younger. But I got married at 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a normal age for women.
Maybe before it would have been, but I think the dynamics have changed. Honestly, like now, because I have a lot of young people around me, and when I look at 22-year-olds and I think to myself, wait a minute, I was married then, but no regrets. I mean, I think it was, I got married to somebody who was very clear about what they wanted to do,
Yeah.
you know, in life, and was a great support system for me. But I had the luxury of deciding to, of being able to choose to raise my children as opposed to going to work. So I was able to you know, raise my children to a particular age, and then went right into business. So my parents were business people, so so the business gene is strong, yeah, within me. So I ran a number of businesses, and honestly, the academic qualifications that I then was able to attain along the way have really been because of the fact that I wanted to equip myself for purpose. You know, coming out of business and then going into purpose, transitioning into purpose, or rather evolving, let me say, into purpose. I always wanted to take an opportunity to feed my potential, or, you know, feed my capacity that way. So currently doing organizational psychology because I am very hungry for the corporate space and just to influence it positively. I also have a Harvard qualification in the art and practice of leadership.
Wow.
Yes, and a lot of other little things. I'm a qualified and accredited coach in performance. I'm a performance coach registered with the ACCP, which is in South Africa, the governing body of Africa coaches. You know, so a lot of equipping along the way.
A lot of accolades right there. But why did you feel the need to acquire all these documentations?
So I think, let me say, my biggest qualification, the Harvard qualification, found me.
Okay.
Yes, so I had an opportunity to study the art and practice of leadership in recognition to the work that I was already doing in the mentorship program, and it was a suitable time to start to explore, you know, leadership, particularly one. My main focus was in adaptive leadership, so helping people to adapt to change. It's something that I do formally, and I also do it informally. So, you know, everything that I've studied really has been about supporting what I do. It's interesting that when God calls you into purpose, He equips you. He gives you gifts.
All these tools.
Yes, so gifts become your tools for purpose, right? And then any learning that happens really is just, you know, strengthening the work that you're already doing, which I think is really great. Organizational psychology obviously speaks into the work that I'm doing with organizations to, you know, strengthen impact at all levels.
Did you see yourself marrying a pastor, being a pastor, serving God when you were growing up as a kid?
So I actually didn't marry a pastor. My husband became a pastor a year later. I don't think I would have chosen the pastor. Anyway, you know, but of course, like we're talking how many years ago? Many years ago, okay. But obviously at that time, as a young, as a teenage girl, I had a certain perception towards, you know, the clergy, and I felt like, you know, maybe my background was really the profile of the clergy that I saw were that they always needed support from other people. And I guess I was looking for not a rich family, but my parents were hardworking civil servants that gave us a very comfortable life. I mean, my parents worked very hard. So my father was a policeman and my mom was a nurse. Yeah. So, but they did so many things. So yeah, been the hard work behind it. So my husband, we got married as ordinary people, and a year after we got married, he became a pastor. So automatically I became a pastor's wife, and I was just lamenting through it all because I found being a pastor's wife very difficult. Like I just felt like there was a certain standard that I needed to keep up, which was required of me, but rightfully so, right? But I felt like the demands were too high on me, and they didn't give me an opportunity for me to make the mistakes I needed to make. And I'm not talking about being careless or disobedient, but I have always been hungry to learn life. You know what I mean? So I wanted the experience. I wanted to go to altar calls, and every time I sat in a church service, none of the pastors' wives went to attend.
Because there'll be a
but now you
judgment
can. Yeah, but I think now like things have changed. Well, they are supposed to change, you know what I mean? I answer altar calls if I have to, you know what I mean? But so I just felt like it would rob me of so much. I wanted to have that real experience and stuff. But of course, I grew, matured into it. I never thought I would take on a pastoral role, but God does what He wants to do. At some point, we figured that out, and no regrets. Such an honor to be able to serve God.
Wow.
Yeah, what an honor.
How did you receive your vision in the middle of another man's vision? Set apart.
So, I mean, I wouldn't really call it in the middle of another man's vision, because I really believe that each and every one of us are fulfilling a purpose. And I know that when we look at marriage, and we look at marriage as a one flesh covenant, what strengthens the covenant of marriage is that you have two purpose-filled and two purposeful individuals who are coming together to live this one life. So even in that one unit, it's like having a really great water and really great mazoe. And when you mix the two together, you have a drink, So when you have these two individuals pursuing purpose, it strengthens the team, it strengthens the covenant. So when my husband went into ministry in the pastoral work, obviously I occupied my space as a pastor's wife, and I wanted to know that I am supporting him, but also fulfilling my role as a pastor's wife. In as far as Set Apart is concerned, and I think all the work really that relates to my life purpose, I always feel like God had a certain strategy with me, because all the work that I've done, and particularly work that has grown, always started small. Set Apart started as a coffee date with one person. So when God asked me to meet one young lady for coffee, I had no problem with it. It was just one person. But of course, then the numbers grew organically. And I think at some point I realized that if God had started me in the middle, if He had said, here are 200 people, I would have said, you know what, God, I'm going to find you someone to do this for you. I will commit. I'll find you a really good pastor or a really good visionary to do this. So, yeah, but of course, like even as I was evolving and seeing the growth of Set Apart, I had a supportive husband right to his passing on. Bishop Paswani was a kind of man who poured out himself into my work. Like, he was the kind of man, he wasn't afraid to let me shine. He built the platforms and said, like, you stand up there and do your thing. I mean, one time I remember, I think when I just started to do big conferences as a guest speaker, and I remember being very, very nervous about taking on this assignment. He was doing some work in Kazungula, and he literally drove to sit in while I ministered, and then drove back.
Wow.
And I mean, talk about supporting and fitting into each other's purpose. Nothing beats that, being able to support each other.
There's a topic that I want to bring up now, but I don't know, it's going to be a long conversation. It's based on the scripture that says, help meet. So there's this message that has been preached that, the woman is helper to the man, and some people believe the woman doesn't have a purpose. The purpose of a woman is to assist the man's purpose. What's your take on that?
Well, if I could ask you a question, like, would you ask for help from someone who knows more than you or less than you? Like, if you're going to ask for help, are you going to ask for help from somebody who knows something you don't know?
I'm going to ask for help from someone who knows more than me.
So being a suitable help is not a weakness. It's not a weak point. Any help that's been given speaks of a capacity and a resource. I think that, Jonathan, what we just need to do in the world we live in now is just to redefine a lot of these words and restore integrity. It's just like when people say, oh, this, I sacrificed for something. It's almost like sacrifice has become a bad word. Commitment has become a bad word. I have a problem that people are not willing to say for better or for worse. Why won't you say for worse? Do you know what I mean? Because are you saying that you are only in it for the better? You know, so going, I think, like going back to what you're talking about, being a suitable help really has to do with the ability to use what you have to support a mission, to support a purpose, you know. And remember that the story doesn't end with the woman being a suitable help. There's also an instruction for leadership upon the man. So the man has a demand on him to release his capacity, his intellectual, emotional, spiritual capacity to be able to offer direction, because what help is he asking for without direction?
Yeah, those are bombs right there, ladies and gentlemen. You see, what I'm loving right now is I haven't even gotten into my
Your questions.
And the conversation
so it means I'm coming back to the show. That's how you come back to the show.
You need to come back several times. But let's talk about grief.
Yeah.
You encountered grief. You're about to write a book about grief. I believe that 2019 was one of the hardest years of your life. Did you go into depression?
So it was actually November 19, so we're like 3 years ago, 2 weeks to this day. So the year itself was okay right till the end, when my husband passed on. Did I go into depression? I think so. I think I did. I mean, like we have to revisit the face of depression. Like, what does that really look like? You know what I mean? But of course, at some point, there is a level of trauma that becomes unbearable. I mean, I would sleep three hours in the night and then wake up in a panic. I would have times when I just didn't have the strength to show up. I remember questioning a lot of things, right? And I think if we think about, okay, what are the symptoms of depression? I probably had them, you know. So I don't think it's possible to suffer such loss and not experience any kind of trauma. So maybe people would say, oh, but Pastor Gladys, we've been watching you. We don't think you went into depression, right? So at the end of the day, I think it's not so much what you went through, it's what you did about it that becomes the game changer. So I've been through what any person who's experienced grief has been through, but perhaps may not have been visible or did not destroy me because of what I chose to do about it.
You know, most of the time when we look at people like you, strong people leading us, giving us direction and showing us how to be exemplary and different and exceptional, we feel certain things are not supposed to happen to certain people, and maybe certain people are too strong. And I feel sometimes when people like you share some of these experiences, it also speaks into someone out there who's going through the same, and speaking into them, saying it's normal. And also sharing, what did you do for you to come out of that space? So certainly I absolutely agree with you. It's important for us to model our lives, a life lived under the care of Christ. We must model that life. And I always say to people, you don't have to be like me sharing details of your story, because not everybody is going to be able to say, you know, I struggled to sleep, you know, and you don't have to tell that story. But I think life, when we continue to serve God, even in our trauma, and when I talk about serving, I'm not trying to talk about like you're on a high level, high energy, and so, I'm just saying that if you keep showing up and you don't quit, somebody is watching you showing up. If it means you are crawling, somebody's watching that you can crawl and show up. So whether we tell our stories or not, somebody's watching us, you know. How did I deal with it? I think that was that your question? Yes.
How did I
Because I'm sure you also got to a point where I remember when I lost my mother, because I think my mother was like an idol or something, someone I looked up to.
You looked up to,
as like a small god, and I couldn't believe when she passed on. And I asked a lot of questions. I believe maybe you also went through where you ask a lot of questions, but why me, why this, and how did you get out of that space and pick up your pieces and continued with the rest of life?
So when we look throughout the Bible, there are so many invitations that God has made to us to say, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. He promised, Hebrews 6:19, that I will anchor your soul. I'll be a sure anchor. And it says that this anchor doesn't slip and you will not be swept away, right? He's close to the brokenhearted. He binds our wounds, and so many promises. When you go through the water, I will be with you. The water will not overwhelm you. The fire will not consume you, right? So all of these promises or assurances he's made to us are first of all showing us that life is going to happen to us. So he tells his disciples, in this world you'll face tribulation, but be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. So we already know there's going to be some trauma, there's going to be challenges, we're going to face situations we have no control over. And when we become aware of that, but we must never leave we must not make the mistake of not cashing in on the promises of God. So one of the things that have kept me going is cashing in on those promises. I had my questions, definitely, because I remember like a week before my husband had passed on, we just gone to the hospital because he loved to do hospital visits, and I went with him one of the days, and he prayed for someone, and the recovery was so evident. Like it surprised the nurses, the doctor. People were so amazed at this person who was gasping for air, being able to stand off the bed. And so, when the thing was, him now being in hospital, first of all, I thought, what, he's going to be okay. This is a man who has served God. And so when we prayed and he still passed on, I was asking God, like, what just happened? And I think it's in us going to God when we have taken our questions to God that allows him to answer us. Because when I was saying, but Lord, how could you let this happen? Why did this have to happen? And he says to me, but Gladys, I never promised that your loved ones will not die. Otherwise, what was Jesus going to prepare a place for? So at that point, I realized he didn't break a promise. I just need to learn what the promises are and then cash in on them.
Wow.
So in terms of like, okay, where has my strength come from? That's a whole conversation. It's strategy. Like there are times when it's difficult. So I need strategies. I need healthy distractions. And I always say to people, if you're going through some kind of trauma, you're going to lean towards some kind of a distraction. So people then fall into unhealthy distractions like, your alcohol, substance abuse, pornography, masturbation, all those things are a coping mechanism. So somebody's looking for something to distract them, because people, like if you see people who have any kind of like a bad habit or an addiction, I'm talking about people who truly love God. What's basically happened is they've been in a situation that they're trying to cope. Like we were not engineered to be oppressed. We were created by God for victory, for abundance. So the human life now starts to cope. So one of the things I learned is like, what if I found a healthy way of coping? And I have strategies that help me cope,
What are those strategies?
I mean, a lot of what you see on the page, like people may be blessed by what I'm sharing, but a lot of it is for me. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm teaching on transition. I'm going through a transition. So the double-edged effect of the Word of God is helping other people, but also I'm speaking to myself. So by the time, and I mean, I throw myself into work as well. And so sometimes, and you look, I'm not trying to say to our viewers that overwork yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are going to be moments where the pain becomes unbearable.
Yeah.
Look, I have happy moments, and especially as time goes on, you know, it gets better. I think pain takes a different expression. In 2 weeks' time is 3 years since my husband passing, but there's still a level of pain that I do experience, right? So what you've got to think about is in those moments where the pain becomes unbearable, what are you going to do about it? And for me, these are the times that I keep myself busy, because if I sit there and feel my feelings, I always say feelings are pain. And feelings are important because they're an indicator of what's wrong. But they are not there for us to wallow in them, because, you know, feelings and pain can take you over the edge, right? Yeah, so we could go on. Prayer, worship.
Yeah.
It anchors me.
You're a powerhouse, and I respect you for that. But then there are some of these, you've sacrificed a lot in your life. I love to bring up the issue of sacrifice whenever I encounter people who've given up some of the things for the sake of the ministry, which is a life, like you said, that seems like it's abnormal now.
Yeah.
But there's a certain favor that you walk into, you know, when we're driving here, you were sharing how, you know, you can walk into ShopRite many times, and the time you get to reach to the till, some people have paid your bills.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, you know, I think like when sacrifice, commitment, dedication, all of those things we do to push us out of our comfort, when we do those things, we mustn't forget that as long as the earth remains, Genesis 8:22, seed time and harvest will always be there. The book of Galatians, I think it should be 6:10, talks about how we should not grow weary in doing good, but it doesn't in due season. So there is always, if we faint not. So there is a due season. It means that the laws and the principles that govern our lives and the earth is that everything that you give comes back to you. You know, we are going to reap what we sow. You know what I mean? So we don't reap where we sow, but we reap what we sow. You know, and so I think that the higher the sacrifice you make, the greater the value. I mean, I don't think that people value Pastor Gladys because of any other thing other than the sacrifice. What I do for people, you know, is what determines my value. So I just think that, you know, it means a lot to people that I've been able to show up for them or to model a life of what it looks like to trust God. And so maybe it matters to them that I showed up, because, you know, showing up doesn't mean I wake up feeling like, yes, you know, I'm going to go in front of the camera today. And sometimes it's literally crawling, you know, onto set. It's crawling to my desk. It's just taking the little strength I have in me to just show up. And that's valuable sacrifice. I think, you know, you spoke about, you know, your mom, and there are many grown men who are so passionate about their mothers. What is that passion about? It is about recognizing the sacrifice this woman put in, you know, and that's what draws them. So I feel like everything that all of the rich rewards I have in this life that I live is simply people reciprocating what they have received. I must say, I truly do live a blessed life.
What has been the biggest blessing in your life? You
know what, Jonathan? Like, I wouldn't be able to. So I can say the biggest in terms of like what would surprise people, maybe, but. But let me answer to you, like the biggest for me,
which meant a lot for you.
Which meant a lot for me was just somebody walking up to me at a time when I was really questioning, you know, am I even making progress? Does this even matter to anyone? was just somebody walking up to me and just saying, you saved my life.
Wow.
And even though I've had many of those, I think what made it meaningful was that while that person was trying to tell me how much I did for them, on that day, that person also saved my life, because I was at a place where I was questioning, like, is this work that I'm doing, does it even matter? I don't know if I'm making progress. It's hard for me, and maybe I've made some mistakes. I don't know if it works. So that person saved me from potentially quitting or downsizing, So I will never forget that woman who walked up to me and said, "Thank you for saving my life."
Have you received free cars and houses?
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this. So not yet, but maybe you will be the one. Because we always see our assignments, Yeah. Wait, have I? No, not a house yet. I think one thing that I thought was like a really big thing. Okay, look, Harvard, for me, to go to Harvard on a paid program, I'm talking about a program that is $10,000 a week.
Wow.
Yeah, a week, like in 7 days.
Someone paid for
$10,000 US. No. The Harvard itself gave me part of the program. A big part of it actually was sponsored. And a whole institution that really couldn't be bothered, honestly, who Pastor Gladys is. They were not looking at me and saying, wow. I also get to see how God, instructs, and moves things in our way. But I remember one time I was, it was January 2020. No, it wasn't. Was it January? Yes, it was 2020, actually. 2020. I had to go for my daughter's graduation in China. So this girl just lost her father, right, a month ago. And in November he passed on. In January she was graduating, and even though I wasn't doing so well, I didn't want her to not be a part of her graduation. I didn't want a memory like that. So of course we just had funeral expenses and stuff like that. So even putting the ticket together was like a little bit of a squeeze. But I was there at the airport, and I had already checked in and gone to the lounge. And they called me back to the check-in desk. I thought, okay, what's going on? And they said to me, listen, this couple just came and upgraded you. You're on business class.
Wow.
And I never flown business class before, but Jonathan, you want to fly business. After I flew business class, I was like, Lord, you know what?
I'm not going back.
From now on,
this
is my level. The level has been set. I'll maintain this, certainly.
Amazing.
Yeah, but they just sent me a message and said, listen, you know what? When we realized you were flying, you have done so much for our family through our daughter. And you know what? We wanted to do this one thing for you, So, yeah, I think.
We'll be ending the interview shortly. But talk to me about the passion that you have for youths and why you see the need to drive the youth in the way that you drive them.
Yeah. I think that through our life journey, there are always intervals where the enemy can manipulate and take advantage. So you'll notice, Jonathan, that where my passions lie are always at those transitional points for people. So whether it's young people who are coming out of their infancy into adolescence, into adulthood, it's like that person at that moment, they are open. It's like, they become open because there's a transition that's happening. So think of a transition being an open space where whatever you throw in can reformat.
It will germinate.
Yeah, so when you look at certain people, you say, this person became like this when? So people say, when I was growing up as a young person, I didn't have this, I went through this. This is why I became this person. People will say, when I went through grief, this is what I experienced, and this is why I became this person. You know, for your own information, a lot of people die soon after they lose loved ones. If you follow, it's a year, 2 years, they die. So I'm always paying attention to those moments where a person's life takes a shift. So specifically when it comes to young people, I think it's a time to deposit the right stuff. It's a time to renegotiate with that person concerning, like, look, this is where you are at. This is what at this point, as a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, you've come to a point where everything that has happened to you, you had no control over.
It's a life-defining moment.
Yeah, but like you had no control over this. Okay, so maybe you were raised under certain conditions, like there are things you didn't choose, but at this point, you now get to make the choices. So that's where I want to be involved now. I want, like, let's deposit the right stuff in there so that your story then takes a shift. So that's why I'm really passionate about young people really discovering, developing, and then unleashing their purpose. Because I do feel like the whole world and every system that governs this world is individuals finding life expression. So in some corporate somewhere, there is a corporate head who is manifesting their beliefs, their everything that is their values, right? So what if we influence those beliefs, those values positively? It means that those who are functioning in leadership positions, you know, the Bible says when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Yes, so it's understanding that these young people are quickly becoming, you know, adults, and we get in that moment to determine, you know, what becomes of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful, and I really love what you're doing, and I'll be there to support. But we're getting into real life questions.
Okay.
And I'll need quick answers.
Okay, all right. Okay.
What would you say is your leadership style like?
Servant leadership.
Servant leadership.
Yeah.
Core values in life?
Honesty, integrity, and honor.
Driving forces?
Passion, purpose.
Biggest accomplishment?
Salvation.
Biggest failure, and how did you learn from it?
Measuring myself against the world, and then discovering the world is not qualified to determine who I am to become. Yeah.
What's the most important thing you've learned in life?
That God fulfills His promise. Yeah.
If you could turn back the time and speak to the 16-year-old Gladys, what would you tell her?
That it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay.
If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Paul, the Apostle Paul.
Why Paul?
Paul, because of how he lived his life after the shift.
Okay.
Between becoming Saul and Paul, I want to know that transition. I want to know how that transition led to impact. We're talking about a man who influenced a third,
of the New
no,
Testament.
2/3 of the world.
Yeah.
He did continents. Yeah. Yeah. So Paul, I would have loved to meet my late mother-in-law, my late husband's mom, because she raised these 9 men in the village selling goats without YouTube, without Pinterest, without a spa date. I want to know, where did she get the resources? Like, what did she tell these men, you know, that got them to be champions in industry?
Wow. Who's the third?
Who's the third? I'd like to meet who I'm yet to become.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited about that woman.
What do you do in your free time? If I told you have free time.
You know what? I don't have free time. Yeah, but I okay, let me tell you, I cherish the time I go to bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Music? favorite
deep,
genre?
intense, spontaneous worship.
Okay.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
What are your last words to people who get to be inspired by Pastor Gladys? That's your comment.
Oh, okay. Who get to be inspired by me. So I think I really want you to know that there is, apart from our looks and our names, there's really no difference between you and I. Our stories may be different, but we're all going through life. You know, I was telling Jonathan earlier on that, you know, as I've been writing on grief, initially I thought it was about death, but I realized grief is about loss, and I know we've all lost something. I'm sitting with gentlemen in this room who they've lost something, whether they tell me their stories or not. I've lost something, so have you. And it's in understanding that anything that inspires you, please don't just look at the strength you see. I want you to be curious enough to figure out, where does the strength come from? I want you to come backstage with me so you can see me trust God. So you can see that I don't always have it figured out, but I never stop. My motto in life is I don't stop while I'm waiting, so I don't mind waiting. Rest, but don't quit. And so my encouragement to you, and another piece of inspiration, is just to say to you that there will be many good reasons, in fact, great reasons to quit, but don't do it. Find rest and keep pressing on. There is a goal, and there is more to your life than this situation you face. That's my word.
Pastor Gladys, I am so humbled, glad, excited, and it's a privilege, you know, to sit with one of the most influential women in this country.
It's a privilege for me too.
I'm blessed, I'm honored, and I pray that we do more business together, more speaking engagements together, more programs together, and you keep coming to the Real Life Show to share life with us. Thank you so much for coming. And let's begin with how we do on the Real Life Show. We just bring you the best that you need and the best that you deserve. This has been me and Pastor Gladys. Peace.
Cheers.
Bye.